Hello, seekers of mystery. Once again, we gather to listen to the whispers of ancient secrets echoing through the depths of history. Tonight's guest is a name woven not only into the holy books, but also into the collective memory of civilizations. A figure shrouded in legend, Zul-Qarnayn. You know, that mysterious one who journeyed to the ends of the earth and built an iron barrier between mighty mountains. But who was he really? A king? A prophet? Or perhaps a being who transcended time itself? This question has haunted not only scholars and seers for centuries, but also truth-seekers like us. Zul-Qarnayn was not merely a conqueror of lands. His title, the Two-Horned One, marked him as a figure who bridged two ages, a man intertwined with the very idea of the apocalypse. His story goes beyond the boundaries of recorded history, because here we're not just tracing the legacy of an empire, we're following the footprints of a force that shaped the flow of time itself. If you're drawn to deep, forbidden and thought-provoking knowledge, you should stay with us, because what we discuss here often lies hidden within the dusty pages of official history. So go ahead, click that subscribe button and ring the bell. When the next veil of truth is lifted, you should be the first to know. Are you ready? Don't take your eyes off the screen. Tonight, we're diving into the darkest corridors of ancient texts to uncover the secret of Zul-Qarnayn. Zul-Qarnayn. In Arabic, the name means the two-horned one. But this title is far from simple. Classical interpretations offer different explanations for its origin. Some say it refers to the two horns on his helmet, much like the depictions of Alexander the Great on ancient coins, where he's shown with the ram horns of Zeus Ammon. Others claim it refers to his two braided locks of hair. But esoteric tradition tells us something else. The word Qarn doesn't only mean horn, it can also mean era or age. So Zul-Qarnayn could actually mean the one who possesses two ages. That makes him a figure stretching not only across geography, but across time itself, one foot in the ancient past, the other in humanity's final age, the master of two eras. When we turn to the Qur'an, Zul-Qarnayn isn't described as a prophet, but as a just, wise and faithful servant of God. He was given a path to everything, a sabab, a metaphysical permission to untangle the threads of destiny. But historians are divided. Early Islamic scholars and some modern academics rejected the idea that he was Alexander the Great because Alexander was a polytheist. Ibn Kathir and other exegetes argued that the Quranic Zul-Qarnayn lived long before that, perhaps during the time of Prophet Abraham, known as the first Alexander. It's said there were more than 2,000 years between them. And here is where the real conspiracy begins. If Alexander doesn't fit this identity, then who does? Some modern researchers find the answer in Cyrus the Great, the Persian king. In Jewish scriptures, he is described as a blessed figure, a ruler who believed in one God. At his palace in Pasargadae, there is a relief of a winged figure wearing two ram horns, almost sealing the title, the Two-Horned One. So this is no longer just about history. It becomes a question of who truly served the divine plan. Yet some early Islamic sources point in a completely different direction, to the Himyarite king of Yemen, Sab-Zumarasid. According to these accounts, Zul-Qarnayn met Khidr in Jerusalem and then journeyed with him into the land of darkness. That transforms him from a conqueror into a sage seeking immortality. You see, the identity of Zul-Qarnayn isn't just a name. He's like a veil cast over time. Each era, each culture gives him a new face. Perhaps the real secret lies not in who he was, but in what he represented. The immense power granted to Zul-Qarnayn is described in the Qur'an with the word sabab, meaning a path to everything. But the depth of this word goes far beyond its surface. While classical translations render it as path or means, ancient Arabic lexicons and esoteric texts interpret it as heavenly cords or celestial routes. In other words, Zul-Qarnayn's journeys were not mere military expeditions across land. He was a traveler following cosmic routes. By tracing these celestial lines, he reached the very boundaries of the world, and perhaps beyond. His first journey was to the place where the sun sets. The Qur'an says he found the sun setting in a dark, muddy spring. This phrase carries both symbolic and esoteric meaning. In the Syriac Alexander legend, this place is described as a foul-smelling sea, where even touching the water brings death. You might recall a similar scene in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the hero encounters deadly waters while seeking the plant of immortality. These parallels suggest that Zul-Qarnayn's story may share the same ancient source as Mesopotamia's oldest tales of eternal life. Here, Zul-Qarnayn establishes justice. He declares that he will punish the wicked and reward those who do good. But for conspiracy researchers, this scene carries a deeper meaning. The image of the sun setting in dark mud is seen in some esoteric sources as the symbol of light sinking into matter, consciousness merging with darkness. It's a metaphor for humanity's inner fall. In Syriac texts, Alexander is said to have sent prisoners into the poisonous sea to test its power. But in the Qur'an, this story takes on an entirely different meaning. It's no longer about strength, but about justice. Perhaps this was an ancient pagan legend rewritten with a divine message, a transformation of a dark ritual into a moral law. Then Zul-Qarnayn traveled eastward, to the place where the sun rises. There, he encountered a people for whom the Lord had provided no shelter against the blazing sun. Some interpreters describe this as a barren plain, a land stripped of vegetation. In the Syriac accounts, however, people would hide in caves or submerge themselves in water when the sun rose, because the heat of the earth was unbearable. All these journeys reveal one thing. Zul-Qarnayn was not merely a conqueror. He was an explorer who pushed the limits of the known world, both physical and spiritual. Even while leading his armies, he was pursuing the order of the cosmos itself. His expeditions were not just about geography, they were about uncovering the mysteries of existence. Zul-Qarnayn's journey is not just about conquering the outer world, but mastering the depths of consciousness. And perhaps the true sabab, that celestial bond, did not stretch toward the heavens, but inward, toward the sky within the human soul. The story that made Zul-Qarnayn legendary begins with his third expedition, to the two mountains between which he built the iron barrier. According to tradition, a tribe sought his help against Gog and Magog, destroyers who spread chaos upon the earth. Zul-Qarnayn refused their offer of tribute and instead said, "Help me with your strength." The matter was not about wealth, it was about willpower. The construction began with a technique far beyond the engineering of its time. The mountain pass was filled with massive blocks of iron. When these blocks reached the height of the peaks, thousands of workers lit great furnaces. As the iron glowed red hot, molten copper was poured over it. The result was a seamless wall of alternating red copper and black iron, like a woven metallic fabric. Commentators say this alloy was so resilient that it neither rusted nor could be pierced. But this was more than an engineering feat. It was an alchemical secret. The merging of iron and copper symbolized the union of elements, matter fused with fire, the material with the spiritual. This was the ancient language of alchemical wisdom. In the Syriac Alexander legend, it is written that 7,000 Egyptian blacksmiths worked on the construction of this wall, and that the gate was sealed with spells and curses. Some sources claim that Zul-Qarnayn covered it with a mysterious substance called tasaktis, which protected it against both fire and demonic beings. So Zul-Qarnayn was not just a conqueror or an engineer. He was a king alchemist, a master of hidden powers. But why such complex, even physically impossible materials? The answer lies in that grey area between history and conspiracy. In the Middle Ages, the easiest way to give authority to a scientific or technical text was to attribute it to Alexander. That's why books like The Treasure of Alexander were filled with both scientific knowledge and mysterious legends. It was a kind of pseudo-authorship, false attribution. But its real purpose was to legitimize secret knowledge. And now perhaps the greatest mystery of all, how could such a unique structure simply vanish without a trace? Maybe the wall was never just a defense line against northern invaders. Maybe it was a cosmic seal, a barrier of energy, a boundary where alchemical knowledge, divine fire, was hidden and preserved. Let's pause here, because this is not light information. If you've made it this far, and something in this story resonates with you, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Every eye that seeks truth helps illuminate this path. So where is Zul-Qarnayn's barrier? That's where the centuries-old riddle begins. The Qur'an only tells us that it was built between two mountains, but history points to several possible locations, and each one carries its own mystery. The first stop, the heart of the Caucasus, the Derbent and Darial passes. Today, the fortress walls of Derbent, located on the shores of the Caspian Sea in Dagestan, are seen by many historians as the strongest candidate. In Persian, Derbent means closed gate, and in Arabic sources it appears as Bab al-Abwab, the gate of gates. Some manuscripts even call it Bab al-Hadid, the iron gate. This Sasanian defense line was built to stop invasions from the north, from the Huns and the Khazars. Even in a manuscript found in Timbuktu, the structure is attributed to Alexander himself. Another candidate lies again in the Caucasus, the Darial Pass. Ancient sources call it the Gates of the Khazars, and in Christian texts, it's described as the place where Prometheus was chained. Archaeological excavations have revealed that a massive fortress was built here by the Persians toward the end of the 4th century CE. But there's one problem. This wall was made of stone, not iron and molten copper, so it doesn't match the Quranic description exactly. The second possibility takes us deep into Central Asia, to the shadows of the Great Wall of China and the Gorgan Wall. Some early Islamic commentators identified Zul-Qarnayn's barrier with the Great Wall of China, since it too was built to stop the Mongol and Hun invasions from the north. The Gorgan Wall in Iran, known as the Red Serpent, stretches over 200 kilometers and was built from brick and baked clay as a massive defensive line against the Huns and the Turks. But again, the same issue remains: no iron, no copper. The third theory is the legend of the Lost Iron Gate. In Central Asia, between Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, there is a mountain pass in the Babatag range. In the 7th century, the Chinese monk Xuanzang referred to this place as the Iron Gate. It was said that the gate was plated with iron, but archaeologists later concluded that this wasn't the enormous structure described in the Qur'an. It was merely a wooden fort reinforced with metal plates. Behind all this confusion lies a single clue. Over time, historians and scholars began identifying every great northern wall built against invading tribes as Zul-Qarnayn's divine barrier. So perhaps there was never just one physical wall at all. Maybe Zul-Qarnayn's barrier was a mythic symbol of protection that merged within the collective memory of nations. And maybe the true conspiracy lies here. Truth itself changes form as geography shifts. Was it a real wall or a barrier built on the level of consciousness? Who knows? Perhaps Zul-Qarnayn's wall still stands, but we've been looking for it in the wrong place. It was the middle of the 9th century. The Abbasid Caliph al-Wathiq had a dream so terrifying that when he awoke, the entire palace fell silent. In his dream, Zul-Qarnayn's iron wall had opened. From within, Gog and Magog burst forth, spreading chaos across the world. It wasn't just a dream, it was seen as a sign of the approaching apocalypse. The Caliph was terrified, and his fear launched one of the most mysterious expeditions in history. The year was 842. The Caliph summoned his interpreter Salam al-Tarjuman. It was said that he knew 30 languages, fluent in Khazar, Turkic, Persian and Arabic dialects. The Caliph commanded him, "Go, find Zul-Qarnayn's wall. See it with your own eyes and bring me news." Salam set out with 50 elite men, carrying gold, silver, trade goods, and even blood money, because the lands they were headed to lay far beyond the known world, beyond the borders of civilization. Their route mirrored the political map of the Caliphate. They passed through Armenia, the land of the Alans, and Syria until they reached the realm of the Khazar Khan. As they approached the unknown mountains north of Derbent, the air grew heavy. For days they crossed a dark and foul-smelling region. They carried vinegar with them to endure the stench. This small detail not only reflected the harsh geography of their journey, but also echoed the motif of the black spring, or fetid sauce often found in esoteric texts, now given a real geographical form. At last they reached a fortress town surrounded by ancient walls. The people there spoke Arabic and Persian. They recited the Qur'an and prayed. But what was strange was this. They had never heard of Samarra, the Caliph, or even the Abbasid Empire. It was a community far from the center of Islam, yet still living in faith, isolated, like a forgotten fragment of the ancient world. And then, Salam finally reached the place of the barrier. The guard commander told him of a strange tradition. Every Monday and Thursday, he would take a rod of iron and strike it against the bolt of the gate. The sound would echo through the mountains, a message to those trapped behind the wall. "We are still here." Salam saw an inscription carved into the wall, its letters made of iron. The text read, "When my Lord's promise comes to pass, he will level it to the ground, and my Lord's promise is true." Qur'an Al-Kahf 1898. On his return journey, Salam brought the Caliph a piece of evidence. A small handful of iron dust, scraped from a crack in the wall. The Caliph kept this tiny fragment as a sacred relic, but the question remained. Did Salam truly see that structure? Centuries later, researchers studied his report and noticed something remarkable: the dimensions, the construction method, the metal alloy. All matched the 7th century Syriac Alexander legend. In other words, Salam's scientific report was in fact a retelling of an ancient myth. So the journey was both real and political. The Caliph's goal may not have been simply to locate the wall. He also sought to observe the Khazar and Turkic tribes and to strengthen his religious authority by confirming the Quranic prophecy. And it was precisely at this point that history merged with mythology. A dream turned into an imperial mission. Zul-Qarnayn's wall became more than stone and metal. It became a symbol of fear and faith. Zul-Qarnayn's wall was built to protect humanity from its greatest threat, Gog and Magog, two names that evoke terror. Even in the darkest pages of sacred texts, they were not just a people, they were a force of destruction, a chaos destined to reshape the end of the world. Esoteric writings and ancient traditions paint a frightening picture of them. They were short in stature, broad-faced, with large teeth and canine-like fangs. Instead of nails, they had claws, and their bodies were covered with thick hair. Their most bizarre feature was their ears. They would lie down on one ear and cover themselves with the other to sleep. They made cooing sounds like pigeons and howled like dogs, creatures somewhere between human and beast. It is said that their numbers were beyond comprehension. None of them died without first seeing at least 1,000 descendants of their own bloodline. Even if all living beings on Earth were gathered together, they could not match their population. This represented unlimited growth and consumption, a metaphor for uncontrolled energy. Some accounts even describe them as cannibals, who ate their own dead and mated like animals. But were these terrifying depictions describing a real race? Or were they symbols pointing to the destructive nature within humanity itself? Throughout the Middle Ages, the names Gog and Magog were linked to invaders from the north. The Huns, Khazars, Scythians, and Mongols, and yes, even the Turks were sometimes described as the people beyond the wall. Some Arab sources claim that the word Turk itself meant the tribe left outside by Zul-Qarnayn, those who were abandoned. It was a way of projecting political fear and hostility through sacred texts, a psychological warfare tactic wrapped in divine language. So Gog and Magog were not merely mythological creatures. Throughout history, they represented the other, the enemy, the unknown, the embodiment of fear. Each era redefined its own chaos in their image. For some, they were barbarian armies from the north. For others, the human greed that consumes endlessly. And for others still, the materialistic destruction of the modern age. Now let me ask you something. Were Gog and Magog really those monstrous beings described in ancient texts? Creatures with great ears and savage instincts? Or have they become the very embodiment of the invisible chaos we see today in our screens, our cities, our economies? Perhaps they are not locked behind a wall anymore. Perhaps they are already among us. Maybe Zul-Qarnayn's wall was never made of iron at all. Maybe it was a spiritual barrier built to contain the destructive power within humankind. When Zul-Qarnayn completed the wall of iron and copper, he did not boast. He said, "This is a mercy from my Lord." And then he reminded them, "When my Lord's promise comes to pass, he will level it to the ground, and my Lord's promise is true." These words are not only about the past, they echo through all of time. Every structure, every power will crumble when the divine moment arrives. The Syriac Alexander legends elaborate on this prophecy. According to the story, the inscription on the gate foretold that 826 years later, the Huns would break through the wall like crashing waves, and 940 years after that, the age of sin and great wars would begin. In the end, when God's promise is fulfilled, that mighty wall will collapse before the armies that surge like waves upon one another. In this light, the story of Zul-Qarnayn becomes not just an ancient tale of conquest, but a prophetic warning stretching all the way to the end of time. Now we reach the most heated part of the discussion. Some modern researchers suggest that the Quranic story of Zul-Qarnayn, Surah Al-Kahf 1883-102, was influenced by the Syriac Alexander tradition of its time. Yet the Qur'an does not simply repeat a political or military legend. It transforms it. It draws the narrative towards the unity of God, Tawheed. It replaces the glory of a pagan conqueror with the truth of justice, divine mercy, and the awareness of the end. Thus, the real question is not only who was he, but what does he represent? When asked, "So where is the wall?" Archaeology replies that none of the known structures, from Derbent to Gorgon, matches the Qur'an's description of iron and molten copper. This absence has led some conspiracy theorists to claim that the barrier lies in a hidden region, invisible even to satellites. But perhaps the true purpose was never to know its location by heart, but to understand the lesson it conveys. The esoteric view tells us this: Zul-Qarnayn's barrier is a symbol of protection woven into humanity's collective memory, a threshold where divine guidance and human craftsmanship meet. The breaking of Gog and Magog's seal represents that inevitable moment when humanity turns against itself like surging waves, when unity and compassion dissolve into chaos. Ancient prophecies say that as the end approaches, Jesus, the Messiah, will descend to earth, but the stench and devastation of Gog and Magog will fill the world. In the end, they will be destroyed by the simplest of God's creations, a mere worm. Even the greatest destruction will fall powerless before divine will. Here's the summary. Not the fleeting glory of mortal rulers, but justice and submission to divine power are what endure. Whether the wall still stands or has crumbled, the true test lies in how prepared we are to face the destructive forces within and around us. So tell me, is the story of Zul-Qarnayn a warning against humanity's arrogance in the face of technology and power? Or is it simply a mythic record of ancient wars and prophecies? Share your thoughts in the comments and let's uncover this mystery together. Zul-Qarnayn, a traveler through time, an alchemist, a conqueror of worlds, and the shadow of a prophet. He walks the fine line between truth and legend. His story is not only about a wall or a barrier, but about humanity's relationship with faith, power, and trial. Yes, the wall still fascinates us, but the true secret is not in the stone, the iron, or the copper, but in the faith that built it. The wall of iron and copper that Zul-Qarnayn forged whispers one eternal message: power lasts only when it stands upon God. When that bond breaks, even the strongest wall will fall. In the next video, we'll unlock another forgotten mystery of history. Until then, never stop questioning the truth. For every question is the key to an unseen reality. Farewell, and always remain in pursuit of the unknown.